The summer of 1943. On the vast, rolling steppes of western Russia, a storm of iron and fire is gathering. This isn't just another battle. It's a collision of titans, a moment destined to become the hinge upon which the Second World War would turn. On one side, the German war machine, bruised but still formidable, prepares for Operation Citadel, a final desperate gamble to regain the initiative on the Eastern Front. They have gathered their finest, the new Panther and Tiger tanks, fearsome beasts of steel, alongside legions of seasoned veterans. Facing them, the Soviet Red Army, having learned brutal lessons in the crucible of Stalingrad, has been waiting. They know the Germans are coming. They know exactly where. For months, they have been digging, laying millions of mines, and assembling an unprecedented concentration of men and material. The world holds its breath. This is the story of Kursk, the largest tank battle in human history, a cataclysmic clash that would decide the fate of nations. Hitler, buoyed by the temporary success of his Field Marshal Erich von Manstein's backhand blow at Kharkov, was convinced of one more decisive victory. The target was the Kursk salient, a 150-mile-wide bulge in the German lines. The plan seemed simple, almost classical, a massive pincer movement. General Walter Model's Ninth Army would attack from the north, while Colonel General Hermann Hoth's 4th Panzer Army, spearheaded by the elite 2 SS Panzer Corps, would strike from the south. They would meet in the middle, encircling and annihilating nearly a fifth of the entire Red Army. It was a textbook strategy, the kind that had won Germany's stunning victories in 1940 and 1941. But 1943 was different. The Soviets were no longer the disorganized force of the early war. Soviet intelligence, aided by the Lucy spy ring in Switzerland and British codebreakers, had given Stalin and his high command an almost perfect picture of German intentions. They knew the what, the where, and the when. Marshal Georgy Zhukov, the man who had saved Moscow and masterminded the victory at Stalingrad, argued against a preemptive strike. Instead, he proposed a strategy of defense in depth. Let the Germans attack. Let them bleed themselves dry against a prepared multi-layered defensive system, and then, once they were exhausted and overextended, unleash the full might of the Soviet reserves in a devastating counteroffensive. It was a risky strategy, trading land for blood, but Stalin agreed. The trap was set. The Soviet preparations were staggering in their scale. Over 1 million soldiers, backed by thousands of tanks and aircraft, were moved into the salient. But the real story was in the ground itself. Soviet engineers and hundreds of thousands of civilians, mostly women and children, worked day and night to create a defensive web unlike any seen before. They dug over 3,000 miles of trenches, enough to stretch from Moscow to Berlin and back. They laid an average of 5,000 anti-tank and anti-personnel mines per mile of front line. Concealed artillery positions, anti-tank ditches, and nests of dug-in T-34 tanks created a pack-front system, a series of deadly anti-tank strongpoints designed to channel and destroy the German armored spearheads. The Kursk salient was transformed into a fortress, a meat grinder, waiting for the German Panzers. On the misty morning of July 5, 1943, the storm broke. A thunderous German artillery barrage hammered the Soviet lines, and the Panzers began to roll forward. In the north, Model's Ninth Army slammed into a wall of Soviet resistance. The terrain, marshy and heavily fortified, was ill-suited for a tank offensive. The German advance was a crawl, measured in yards, not miles, and every yard was paid for in blood and burning steel. The new Ferdinand tank destroyers, massive 70-ton vehicles with powerful 88mm guns, proved formidable when firing from a distance, but were vulnerable up close, lacking a machine gun for self-defense. Soviet infantry swarmed them, disabling them with explosives and Molotov cocktails. After a week of brutal fighting, Model's northern pincer had stalled, having gained less than 10 miles at a catastrophic cost. The main event, however, was in the south. Here Hoth's 4th Panzer Army, with its elite SS divisions Leibstandarte, Das Reich, and Totenkopf made more significant progress. Their Panther tanks, making their combat debut, were initially plagued by mechanical failures, but their sloped armor and powerful 75mm gun were a deadly match for the Soviet T-34s. The formidable Tiger tanks, with their near-impenetrable frontal armor and lethal 88mm guns, acted as battering rams, punching holes in the Soviet lines. For days, a ferocious battle of attrition raged. The Soviets, following Zhukov's plan, gave ground grudgingly, exacting a heavy price for every village and every hill. They threw in tank brigades to blunt the German advance, often sacrificing them to buy precious time. The climax arrived on July 12, near a small village called Prokhorovka. The 2nd SS Panzer Corps, having broken through 2 of the 3 main Soviet defensive belts, was poised to achieve a breakthrough. To stop them, the Soviets unleashed their strategic reserve, the 5th Guards Tank Army, under General Pavel Rutmistrov. What followed was a swirling, chaotic vortex of close-quarters tank combat. Around 1,200 tanks and assault guns from both sides converged on a narrow corridor of farmland. This was not the long-range dueling of the desert. This was a brutal, point-blank brawl. The battlefield was a vision of hell. The smoke from burning vehicles and constant explosions reduced visibility to mere yards. Tanks rammed each other. Crews who bailed out of their burning machines were cut down by machine gun fire. The superior long-range firepower of the Tigers and Panthers was negated in the melee. Here, the agility and numerical superiority of the Soviet T-34s came into play. They swarmed the heavier German tanks, aiming for their thinner side and rear armor. Soviet infantry, riding on the backs of their tanks, in a tactic known as tank descent, jumped off to hunt down German armor with anti-tank rifles and grenades. The air crackled with the shriek of metal, the roar of engines, and the horrifying boom of ammunition cooking off in destroyed tanks. By the end of the day, the fields around Prokhorovka were a smoldering graveyard of hundreds of armored vehicles. While tactically a bloody stalemate, Prokhorovka was a strategic Soviet victory. The 2nd SS Panzer Corps, the razor's edge of the German army, was battered and exhausted. They had failed to break through. Their offensive power was spent. Coinciding with this, the Allies landed in Sicily, forcing Hitler to divert crucial units, including the 2 SS Panzer Corps, to Italy. Operation Citadel was officially cancelled. The Great German Summer Offensive was over. Now, it was Zhukov's turn. With the Germans weakened and their reserves depleted, the Soviets launched their own massive counteroffensives, Operation Kutuzov in the north, and Operation Polkovodets-Rumyantsov in the south. The exhausted, overstretched German forces, which had been the attackers just days before, were now forced into a desperate defense. They were pushed back, past their starting lines, losing the cities of Orel and Belgrade. By August 23rd, they were thrown out of Kharkov for the final time. The Kursk salient, once a German target, was now a springboard for a relentless Soviet advance that would not stop until it reached Berlin. The Battle of Kursk was the death knell of the German Panzerwaffe on the Eastern Front. They had thrown their best against the Soviets and had been broken. Never again would Germany mount a major strategic offensive in the East. From Kursk onwards, the strategic initiative belonged to the Red Army. The losses were staggering. Hundreds of thousands of casualties on both sides, thousands of tanks and aircraft destroyed. But for Germany, the losses in experienced crews and irreplaceable heavy tanks were crippling. The days of blitzkrieg were over. The day the Panzers died at Kursk was the day the road to Berlin was thrown wide open. Thank you for watching. If you found this journey into one of history's most pivotal battles interesting, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the past. Let us know in the comments what piece of history you'd like us to explore next. Till then, stay curious.